Do I get to preview the questions before we record? I am very excited about the ordination. At the same time, I'm a little bit nervous, like the time is going very fast. I'm very happy, very excited about it. I feel well prepared. Seminary life seems like a very short, but at the same time, it has kind of feel like it's been enough for me to be able to prepare, to pray, to discern whether that's what God is calling me for. Obviously, preaching will still be one of the things I'm looking forward to continue doing. But in addition to preaching, I'm looking forward to celebrate Mass. My faith has been nourished by Mass, so I'm looking forward to be able to celebrate Mass, but also the sacrament of reconciliation. In many ways, like we're all sinners in many different ways. We do sin, and part of being able to recognize, first of all, that we're sinners, and then it's the first step to be able to seek God, to be back in communion with Him. That draws me being the sacrament, being able to come close to God through the sacrament, like being like a source of like a reunion with God. Something that have always like drawn me to the priesthood, even when I was younger, growing up. In my hometown in Burundi, I used to see people having conflicts, and every time like there were conflicts, whether in families, whether it was in the town. Usually they will invite the priest to come to be able to reconcile people. I've always seen admired that part of the priest, being someone who is a symbol of unity. And even after I joined seminary, I've always reflected on that as priest, as someone who unites others, as obviously the Son of Christ here today in the world. And obviously Christ has asked us to remain united. Mm-hmm. And now as I go, my ordination is drawing closer. That's something that I pray for in my own priesthood, that I be able to be a son of unity. My vocation to the priesthood has been really influenced in, I think, my family's journey to the United States. Before we came here, I grew up from a Catholic family. Both my parents and both my grandparents were Catholics. So the Catholic faith was very important in our family. But surprisingly enough, I do have an uncle who is a priest. And I used to see him growing up, see especially the part of uniting people that I liked. But other than that, I never thought much about the priesthood. Around 2008, I think things started to change for our family. My dad was in politics, and he was trying to run again for re-election. He was a representative for our province. But then the person who is a rival in the election, he started trying to assassinate him. Because he started to realize my dad was mostly going to win. So those all events kept going on. My dad realized that he was very serious. So we moved from the town where we used to live. We went to the capital city, Bujumbura, and then we lived there for about less than a year. And my dad continued to notice that the same thing were happening again. Yeah. But then during the election, there was other corruptions that ended up happening. So that after the election, my dad had to flee. So he fled to Kenya, but at the same time, he left the whole family at home in Burundi. And during that time, when he went in Kenya, he realized that they also found out he was in Kenya. So, and it was those moments that my mom really started asking me to go to pray for him and pray for the safety of our family. So every Saturday, I will go to the shrine that was close to our home parish, and I'll just have pray for my dad during the blessed sacrament. I keep praying for him, for his safety, for the safety of our family. Yeah. And every once in a while, my mom will thank us, seeing that I'm taking serious, and even my younger siblings sometimes they go with me, saying that we're taking serious, going to pray for our safety. And my mom will always tell me God listens to your prayers. God listens to children. That was always the motivation. She always She always tell me to go to pray because God always listens to children. And truly, my dad got to Kenya. He was there for almost a year. But then once he got there, the first thing he asked for was an asylum. He asked for an asylum pretty much in most countries that he could think of. United States, Canada, in Australia, in France, the other places. But the United States was the only country that responded. And then they gave him an asylum. And then he came here in 2012, in December. And at that time, it kind of really it changed, I think, my attitude toward prayer. Before my mom would tell me, pray, God listen to children. But at the same time, when my dad came here, it was, I think God did more than I prayed for, what I asked. I asked for safety. That experience of going to pray for his safety, and then first of all, surviving and coming here, it really deepened my faith and my love for God. And it brought me to the faith in a way that was serious. And something that, surprisingly enough, among the people who work with my dad, actually, my dad told me there's only him and one more person who survived. Before we came here, I used to sing in a choir, a children's choir at my own parish. So we went and asked our pastor we were about to leave the country. We wanted his blessing. And he told me, with my younger siblings, wherever you're going, always remember this place. Remember what you have experienced. Remember your prayers, or everything pretty much that happened here, and be able to share with others. He said that as an advice, but really that for me that felt like a calling. The first words that kind of made me start thinking about my calling. How am I going to share with others what I've experienced, what I've to be a witness to the beauty of God, and also all the wonderful things that He's done for me, for my family. So when I came here in the United States, I came very excited, wanting to share about everything. But the first thing I noticed, I didn't know English, so I didn't know what to say. I was 15 years old when we came here. I didn't know English. I just continued going to Mass with my family. The beautiful thing about the Mass is that Mass is the same everywhere, and though it's in different languages, but when you're at Mass, you can tell where we are, what part of the Mass where we are. So we go to Mass, didn't understand anything. We go back home. My mom would try to read back the readings for us. So we go over the readings again, and she would kind of give her own little sermon. So every Sunday, so that's pretty much what every Sunday evening, family prayer. And surprisingly enough, even though when I was in Burundi, I used to sing in a choir, but one thing I never did was be an altar server. And all my friends were altar servers. I've always refused to be an altar server. Funny enough, I got here, we came to the United States, we're short of altar servers. They asked me to be an altar server. I said no. My young brother, he said yes. And I started seeing him as an altar server, and I became jealous. So the next time, I told the deacon, my home parish, next time if you need a server, let me know. And then one day we didn't have a server, so he pulled me 2 minutes before Mass. He's like, well, here you go. But since then, I've loved being at the altar. I continue serving pretty much almost every Sunday. When I was about to become a sophomore, so I've been we've been here a little bit over a year in the United States. We had a picnic at my home parish, and then our pastor got injured. So he broke his leg during the picnic on Saturday. So the next day on Sunday, they had put the cement on his leg, so he's processing during Mass. And I happened to not be serving that day, so I was sitting in the pews, and I'm just looking at him walking toward the altar, trying to genuflect. It was hard for him. And throughout the Mass, it was very hard for him. So, and I remember during the Eucharistic prayer, just looking at him, and it's I wish I can celebrate Mass. That way I will just celebrate it for him. He will not be suffering how much he's suffering. Mm-hmm. And what surprised me is after that Sunday, every time I came back to Mass, I kept having the same thing thought. To that point, I have not thought much about the priesthood. But here I'm having these ideas that keep coming, and I'm trying to kind of push it away. But one day I went and told my mom, like, this is what I've been thinking about. The idea that kept coming. My mom told me, well, maybe you might become a priest, maybe, and I was, no, I started coming with excuses. Mom, I don't know English. There's no way I can be a priest without knowing English. And then my mom started quoting Moses, like in Exodus, talking about how Moses went to the burning bush, and Moses was telling God the same thing, like, I don't know what to say, and God told him, like, I'll tell you what to say. That excuse, I didn't have it anymore. So I started thinking about, I just think, I shouldn't be a priest. But the more I kept thinking about it, I think I started to feel uncomfortable coming to church, coming to mass, because I was pushing that idea, and the more I pushed it, I was becoming uncomfortable. Somehow I was in prayer, and I don't know, I was just praying in silence, and somehow I started thinking about, before we came to the United States, I used to go to the Blessed Sacrament to pray for the safety of my dad, pray for my family for safety. And all those times that I prayed, God listened. And that hit me hard, because God always listened to my prayers. But now at this point, I'm not listening whenever God is speaking to me. So that hit me hard. I started thinking about the priesthood, be open to the priesthood. And then, so at the point I went to tell the associate pastor to my own parish, is Father Roy Stiles. I went to tell him I was thinking about the priesthood. I told him all the things I was afraid of. I didn't know English. I had no idea anything about the Archdiocese. Mm-hmm. So he started telling me a few stories about the early bishops, Bishop Fabre. He told me a little bit about the history of the diocese. He started teaching me how to do a few prayers in English. He gave me a little book. I still have it today. Even I still use it sometimes when I'm praying. That has pretty much all the basic Catholic prayers and a little bit more that I started using to learn Our Father in English, starting to learn Hail Mary. We had a tech retreat that they used to have for the youth. So I went to one of those, and pretty much I started building a little bit connection with the youth here in the Archdiocese. Pretty much when I started seminary, my idea was more of like, let me listen to the Lord. Let's see how that goes. I know the priesthood, I've not thought much about it, but if that's what God wants me, I do trust really that He will not mislead me. I will try it out. If it works, that's perfect. If it doesn't work out, at least I'll have an excuse one day when I go to heaven. It's like, Lord, I tried, it didn't work. I started seminary. After 1 year, I have had a wonderful experience. It was hard as well, being away from home in a different culture. But at the same time, I've enjoyed being in the seminary. Enough that I wanted to go back for one more year. After the second year, I was not thinking about leaving anymore. So it was more clear that I am where I should be.